Hot tea, cold intentions. Bells rang, cups clinked. Lady Bantry stood near the entrance, checked each table. Right hand trembled, pressed it against her dress. Mrs. Dodds worked in the kitchen. Steam hissed from the urn. Tapped a spoon against a jug. No words. Lily stepped out with a tray. 3 cups rattled. Steps quick. Eyes avoiding guests. Clive stood at the till, tie straight. Flour dusted his cuff. Mint under his cologne. Miss Marple sat in the corner, chair toward the counter. 2 silver teapots, side by side. 1 cream ribbon, 1 blue. She noted it. The door opened. Mabel Knox entered, eyes scanning the room. Walked to a corner table. "Assam," she told Lily. Lady Bantry moved closer. "Mabel," she said. "Grand opening. Today." Mabel nodded once. Mrs. Dodds carried a fresh pot, placed it on the counter. Steam rose, thin. Lily served tea to 2 women. They leaned together, whispered, looked toward Mabel. Clive wrote in a ledger, looked at Mabel, then away. Miss Marple's focus stayed on the ribbons. Cream, new, blue, worn. Lady Bantry touched her neck. Storeroom key on a chain. Felt lighter than usual. A bell rang from the kitchen. Mrs. Dodds called Lily inside. The waitress obeyed. A chair scraped. A cup fell. Sharp. Crack. Miss Marple leaned forward, scanned the floor. Small brown mark. Near the wall. Rough edges. Not dirt, not paint. Metal stain, rust, key-shaped. A rust mark from an old key, visible on the floor. Cream ribbon or blue? 2 silver pots. Labels straight, ribbons mismatched. Miss Marple stepped closer, brushed the cream ribbon. Smooth, blue ribbon, rough. Steam rose from the left pot, right pot. Faint wisp. 1 hot, 1 not. Lady Bantry stood behind the counter, touched the chain at her neck. Storeroom key, lighter than before. Fingers stayed there. Clive walked past, placed a ledger down, cover shut tight. Soot on the edge. Turned it, face down. Miss Marple looked at the cold pot spout. Dry, unused. A couple laughed. Spoons clinked. They poured from the hot pot. Lady Bantry leaned to Mrs. Dodds. "Check the urn," she whispered. Mrs. Dodds nodded. Left. Lily came from the back, wiped her hands, shoes, damp prints, glanced at the pots, looked away. Clive to Lily. "Serve table 3." Tone clipped. Miss Marple picked up a menu, didn't open it. Eyes stayed on the pots. Cream ribbon, new, blue, frayed. Lady Bantry's shoe tapped. Eyes to the kitchen door. Mrs. Dodds returned. "Urn's fine." Didn't look at Clive. Lily poured a psalm for Mabel. Mabel stirred slow. Eyes to Lady Bantry, then to Miss Marple. The couple at table 2 called. Clive lifted the hot pot, poured without pause. Steam drifted over his cuff. Miss Marple moved to the counter edge, touched the cold pot handle. Warm, no steam. Lady Bantry noticed. Eyes narrowed. No words. Clive replaced the pot. Handles aligned. Ribbons forward. Chatter stayed steady. No one noticed, except Miss Marple. She glanced at Lady Bantry, then at the clock. Lily moved to the storeroom door. Tried the handle. Wouldn't turn. Stepped back. The second hand passed the mark. A sharp sound. The phone rings. Exactly at 11:20. A fall without poison. Mabel lifted her cup. Took a sip. Her face lost color. Her hand slipped from the handle. Chair scraped the floor. Sharp sound. She leaned forward. One elbow hit the table. Other hand pressed her chest. Peppermint smell filled the space. Strong, too strong for tea. Someone stood from the next table. "Poison!" they shouted. The word spread. Lady Bantry moved fast, hands steady now. She held the back of Mabel's chair. Clive stepped forward. "Clear the way." Firm voice. Mrs. Dodds left the kitchen, carried a towel, dropped it on the table. Lily froze near the counter, eyes on Mabel. No movement. Dr. Haydock entered, kneeled beside Mabel, took her wrist, counted, under his breath. "Pulse steady," he said. "She's breathing. Normally." The whisper of poison kept moving. No one sat. Miss Marple stayed in her chair, eyes on the cup. She leaned forward. The rim caught the light. Thin dust clung to it, pale, like salt. She looked at the teaspoon. Dry, unused. Lady Bantry stepped back. "Get her some water," she told Lily. Lily obeyed. Clive poured from the teapot. Steam rose, then faded. Dr. Haydock spoke low. "You'll be fine. Stay still." Mabel's eyes closed, breathing even. Miss Marple touched the Assam pot. Cold. She looked at the Earl Grey. Steam still rose. Heat, without touching. Clive put the Assam pot back. Handles aligned, ribbons forward. Mrs. Dodds cleared cups, fast. Lady Bantry's eyes went from Clive to Mabel. No words. The crowd settled, chairs back, voices low. Miss Marple stared at the pots, one cold, one hot. The cold served to Mabel. She looked again at the other. Expression unchanged. Assam, pot cold. So, where did the steam come from? Smell tells the truth. Tea room sealed, main door locked. Only staff remained. Mrs. Dodds in the kitchen. Twisted spice jar lids, one slipped. She tightened it again. Miss Marple entered, eyes on the sugar jar. Touched the lid. Fibers stuck to her fingertip. Software synthetic. Fleece. She wiped them on a napkin. Folded once, pocketed it. Lily came from the storeroom, tray in hand. No cups. Miss Marple glanced at her shoes. Dark soles. Bits clung to the edges. She crouched. Rye crumbs. Lily noticed. Stepped back quick. Heel hit the lower shelf. No words. Lady Bantry entered. Everything accounted for. Except storeroom, Mrs. Dodds said. That's Clive's. Clive in the doorway, leaning. Storeroom's fine. No need to check. Miss Marple's eyes went to the door. Shut. She stepped past him. Storeroom smelled sharp. Not tea, peppermint. She opened the top shelf drawer, small paper bag. Peppermint drops, half full. Lower shelf. Sealed jar, cotton wool, unused. Surface damp. Lady Bantry joined her. "Why peppermint?" she asked. No answer. Clive stepped in. Beside the shelf. "Everything here is stock." He closed the drawer. Mrs. Dodds came to the doorway. "Kitchen's clean." Looked at Clive. Didn't smile. Lily near the counter. Hands behind her back. Eyes on the floor. Miss Marple left the storeroom, entered the back corridor. Air different. Faint flower. Faint peppermint. She looked at the wall. Gas panel, set low, 4 screws. Eyes dropped to the floor. Lady Bantry came beside her. "What is it?" Miss Marple pointed to the base. Linoleum had a line, light one side, dark the other. Dust uneven. Fresh difference. She crouched, touched the light side. Fine powder on her fingertip. She stood. Met Lady Bantry's eyes. No words. Fresh dust line near the gas panel in the back corridor. Key gone. Intent alive. Lady Bantry touched her chain. Storeroom key felt lighter. Too light. She held it in her palm. Weight. Wrong. Lily stepped closer. "I saw the lock. Open." Low voice. Lady Bantry looked at her. "When?" "This morning. Before opening, Clive walked in from the corridor. Inventory is safe." His eyes stayed on Lady Bantry. Too long. Mrs. Dodds entered behind him. "I never leave it unlocked." She looked at Clive. Miss Marple crouched on the far side. Eyes on faint scuff marks. They led from the storeroom door to the shelves. She stood. "Has anyone moved the tins?" Silence. Lady Bantry turned to Clive. "You have the storeroom key?" "Yes." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small brass key, placed it on the counter. "This is mine." Miss Marple picked it up. examined the edge. Fresh scratches. One side only. She set it back. "This is not Lady Bantry's." Clive crossed his arms. "They're identical." Lily stepped away from the counter, eyes on the back shelves. Mrs. Dodds followed her gaze. "What is it?" "Nothing," Lily said quickly. Miss Marple moved to the shelves, shifted tins from the front row, hands steady. The third tin rattled. She lifted it, heavier than the others. She set it on the counter, removed the lid. Flour, no label. Clive stepped closer. "That's kitchen stock." Miss Marple stirred the flour. Metal tapped the spoon. She pulled out a short screw, bright. No dust. She placed it on the counter. "From the gas panel," she said. Clive reached for it. Miss Marple slid it away. Mrs. Dodds crossed her arms. Why would it be here? No answer. Lily shifted her weight, glanced toward the far corner. Miss Marple followed her gaze, pulled out another tin, empty. She reached behind. Fingers brushed metal, smooth. She pulled it forward. Cake tin. Bottom had a faint, shiny patch, like something scraped away. Under a cake tin, a shiny mark. Something removed. A scent left behind becomes a path. Miss Marple stepped into the back corridor. Peppermint smell. Strong. Too strong for tea. She paused at the wall vent. Moisture on the slats. Touched it. Damp. Lady Bantry joined her. "That's not from today," Miss Marple said. Mrs. Dodds appeared, eyes on vent, then floor. Nothing leaked from the kitchen. Miss Marple opened a storage crate. Packets of tea stacked inside. She pulled out one marked Assam, seal intact. Picked another. Earl Grey, stamp upside down. Clive walked in from the storeroom. Cuffs caught the light. Fine flour on the fabric. "Why are you here?" Lady Bantry asked. "Checking stock." He brushed his sleeve. Miss Marple kept sorting. Only one packet had a wrong stamp. Lily came from the kitchen, hands clasped, eyes moving between Clive and Lady Bantry. "The phone rang last night," she said quietly. Everyone turned. "What time?" Miss Marple asked. "Late. I didn't check." Eyes dropped to the floor. Mrs. Dodds stepped closer. "Who answered?" "No one. It stopped after 2 rings." Clive adjusted his tie. "Probably a wrong number." Miss Marple glanced at him. "You hear it?" "I was in my room," he said quickly. Lady Bantry moved to the vent, pressed her palm to the frame, cold. Miss Marple took the upside-down packet. "This doesn't belong here." Placed it on the counter. Clive reached for it. Miss Marple blocked him. "It stays." Mrs. Dodds bent down. "All the others are in the right place." Lily stayed at the kitchen door. Looked ready to leave. Miss Marple watched her. "Why mention the phone now?" "I thought it might matter." Lady Bantry turned toward the main room. Low hum of voices carried in. The clock ticked loud. Second hand past the mark. Sound cut through the corridor. Phone rings again. Same time, 11:20. A burned book never burns completely. Clive sat in the office. He opened a drawer. It rattled. Miss Marple entered. Eyes went to the desk. "Inventory?" she asked. Clive closed the drawer halfway. "Just accounts." She stepped closer. Ash on the corner. Edges blackened. She bent down, picked up one piece. Center burned away, edges stiff, dry, smell sharp. Clive reached for it. "I'll clear that," he said quickly. Miss Marple held the piece to light. Faint letters, 2 initials, M.K. She looked at him. "Mabel Knox?" No answer. He shut the drawer fully. The sound was loud. Lady Bantry appeared. "Why is it burned?" "Old records," Clive said. "No need to keep them." Miss Marple placed the scrap on the desk. Other fragments had numbers. Half missing. She picked another piece, 2 columns, one empty, one with rounded amounts. "Not stock prices," she said quietly. Clive shifted. They were payment notes. Mrs. Dodds entered. "What about the interest rates?" Miss Marple turned the scrap. Figures in tight hand. Rates sharp. Too steep. Lady Bantry stepped closer. "These weren't for business here." Clive adjusted his cuff. "No connection." Miss Marple looked at the desk. Soot smear, trailing from corner to center. Her eyes went to the fireplace. Cold, unused. Mrs. Dodds tipped the waste bin. Gray dust spilled. A charred piece of binding fell. Miss Marple picked it up. Leather cover, edge cracked from heat. She turned it over. No title, no label. Lady Bantry asked, "Why burn it now?" "Cleaning old files," Clive said. Miss Marple's gaze stayed on his hands, one on desk edge, other half hidden in pocket. She stepped closer. "May I see your hand?" He hesitated, pulled it out. Skin near thumb reddened. Small mark. Edges dark. A small burn mark on Clive's hand. Darkness slows the truth. Miss Marple near service door. Curtains slightly lifted. She watched the alley. Mrs. Dodds turned off the stove. Metal ticking filled the kitchen. Lily stood in hallway, hands clasped, breathing quick. Lady Bantry moved between tables, checked each chair. No words. Room dimensions. One lamp near counter. Clive came from the office. Coat buttoned, collar adjusted. He passed Lily. She stepped back, eyes on him. Miss Marple noted the time. Minute hand near mark. Finger on watch face. Clive reached back door. Latch turned slow, dull sound. He stepped outside. Coat rustled. He looked both ways. Mrs. Dodds in kitchen doorway, hands on towel, eyes on Clive. Lily stepped forward. Miss Marple raised a hand. Lily froze. Clive walked to side gate. Small package under arm. Miss Marple followed. Silent steps. He reached the storage shed. Opened door. Hinge gave short creak. He stepped inside. Shed light spilled, then vanished. Miss Marple moved closer, stopped short. Tilted head. Inside, a lid lifted. Faint scrape. Lady Bantry appeared. "What's he doing?" No answer. Ear pressed to wood. A thud. Silence. Paper rustle. Lid again. Mrs. Dodds pointed to window. Miss Marple nodded. Lily moved to far side. Looked in. Eyes widened. Mouthed two words. "Cake tin." Miss Marple stepped back. Checked watch. Second hand hit the mark. Inside, metal touched wood. Light. Precise. Clive's coat shifted. Steps toward door. Miss Marple signaled. They stepped aside. He passed. Package gone. Dust brushed from coat. From behind the shed door, a faint clink. Cake tin swapped. When changing something is the evidence. Clive stepped out of the shed. Inspector Slack blocked his path. "Put it down," he ordered. Clive hesitated. Then handed over the cake tin. Slack opened it. Empty. Only a faint smell drifted out. Peppermint. Slack looked up sharply. "Where's the poison?" His tone was sharp. Clive didn't answer. His eyes moved to Miss Marple. She stepped closer. "It's not in the tea," she said. "It's in the air." Slack frowned. "In the air." Miss Marple nodded. She set the tin on a crate, pointed toward the shed wall, a vent. Set low to the ground, she crouched in front of it. Fingers brushed the frame. She reached inside. A cotton wad came out. It was damp. Slack leaned in. "Smell it," Miss Marple said. He did. Peppermint. Strong. Mrs. Dodds stepped into the shed. She looked at the shelves. "All tins are in place," she said. Lady Bantry joined them. Eyes stayed on Clive. "What were you swapping?" Clive shook his head. "Nothing important." Lily came from the side door. She looked at the tin on the crate. "That's not the same one from earlier." Miss Marple agreed. "This one hasn't been in the kitchen." Slack tapped the tin. Where's the other?" Clive stayed silent. Miss Marple turned the cotton wad in her hand. "It's been in the vent for hours," she said. "It would release a scent, strong enough to mask something else." Lady Bantry stepped closer. "Mask what?" Miss Marple glanced toward the corridor. "Gas," she said quietly. Slack's head turned. "You're saying the tea wasn't the target?" "No," Miss Marple said. "The air was." Mrs. Dodds folded her arms. "Who would do that?" Miss Marple looked at Clive. He didn't respond. Slack stepped toward him. "You're coming with me." Clive raised his hand slightly. "I haven't done anything." Lily moved past them to the gas panel. She crouched down. Her hand touched one of the screws. She looked back at Miss Marple. "This is loose." Miss Marple walked over, knelt beside Lily. The screws were clean, metal bright. Slack crouched beside her. "They were replaced recently." Miss Marple ran her finger over the top one. "No dust, no rust." Lady Bantry's voice was firm. "They weren't like that yesterday." Miss Marple stood. She looked at Slack. "This is the key." Screws on the gas panel. Shine new. No poison needed. Breath is enough. Dr. Haydock stood at the counter, test tubes in a row. He dipped a strip into the liquid. Waited. Miss Marple watched. "Well?" "No toxin," he replied. "Not in the tea, not in the cup." Lady Bantry folded her arms. "Then what happened?" Miss Marple walked to the vent cotton on the table. Touched it lightly. "Peppermint," she said. "Used to mask something else." She opened her handbag. Took out a small glass jar. Placed peppermint drops inside. Then added warm air from a kettle spout. The scent spread quickly. Within seconds, Mrs. Dodds covered her nose. "It's strong." Miss Marple nodded. "Now imagine the scent filling the air, with no windows open." Dr. Haydock leaned forward. "Peppermint oil vapor can hide gas traces." "Exactly," Miss Marple said. She walked to the two pots. Touched the Assam. Cold. Touched the Earl Grey. Hot. Steam lifted. "This was staged," she said. "One pot to serve, one to distract." Lady Bantry pointed toward Mabel. "And her collapse?" Miss Marple walked over, looked at Mabel. "Pulse was normal," she said. "Breathing steady. Too steady for a true faint." Mabel didn't answer. Eyes on the floor. Clive stood near the doorway. He didn't move. Miss Marple turned back to Lady Bantry. She collapsed to give the appearance of poisoning. The real aim was confusion. Mrs. Dodds stepped forward. "So someone could adjust the gas panel without notice." "Yes," Miss Marple said. "The peppermint made the air pleasant enough to mask it." Dr. Haydock set down his tube. "So the weapon wasn't in the tea at all." "No," Miss Marple said. "It was in the air." Voices carried from the main room. Low, constant. The hum of gossip spread from table to table. Lady Bantry straightened. "This will ruin the tea room if word spreads." Miss Marple replied, "Then we stop it now." She stepped toward Mabel. "Your bag, please." Mabel's hand tightened on the strap. Clive shifted. Miss Marple waited. Mabel slowly handed over the purse. Miss Marple opened it, removed a folded packet of papers, thin slips stacked. She read the top one, an IOU. The amount was large. The name signed was clear. She read it aloud. CP. Clive's jaw tightened. Lady Bantry's eyes moved to him. IOUs in Mabel's purse. Signatory? CP. Debt. Makes voices louder. Miss Marple set the burnt ledger scraps on the table. The edges matched, like pieces of a puzzle. Dr. Haydock leaned in. "These numbers match the ash we found earlier." Lady Bantry scanned the columns. "All these amounts are short-term loans?" "Yes," Miss Marple replied. "Clive issued them. The interest rates, ruthless." Mrs. Dodds frowned. And Mabel? Miss Marple pointed to an entry marked M.K. She signed to save her business. Mabel kept her eyes down, hands gripping her purse. Lady Bantry spoke sharply. "You took his money." Mabel looked up. "I had no choice. The payments were impossible. He wanted something else in return." Clive's jaw tightened. "Lies," he said. Miss Marple tapped another column. "This payment was due today." By 11:20, Mrs. Dodds folded her arms. That's exactly when she collapsed. Miss Marple nodded. "Yes, the timing is not coincidence." Dr. Haydock spoke. "So the scandal would distract from the debt?" "More than that," Miss Marple said. "It was leverage. If the tea-room's reputation was damaged, Clive could push Lady Bantry into needing his financial help." Lady Bantry's expression hardened. "And then?" "He would gain control," Miss Marple said simply. Mabel's voice shook. "He said I just had to play my part, pretend to be poisoned, create a scene." Slack stepped all forward. "Why agree to that?" Mabel looked away. "Because if I didn't, he'd ruin me anyway." Clive shifted. "Nothing can be proved," he said. Miss Marple's eyes moved to Lily. "You were involved." Lily shook her head quickly. "I didn't touch the tea." "No," Miss Marple agreed. "But you knew. The signal." Lily's eyes widened. She glanced at Clive, then back at Miss Marple. Slack's tone was sharp. "What signal?" Miss Marple answered. "The phone. It rang at the same time, both days. That was the cue." Lady Bantry looked at Lily. "He told you the time." Lily hesitated. Her fingers twisted her apron. Clive stared at her. Face unreadable. Lily stepped forward. Voice barely a whisper. "Yes." Miss Marple waited. Lily swallowed hard. "He taught me when to expect it, so I'd know when to move away from the counter." Slack moved closer. "And who made the call?" Lily looked at Clive again. Her answer came slowly. Lily confesses. "He taught me. The phone signals time. What you see isn't training." Lily stood near the counter, hands clasped tight. Miss Marple spoke first. "The caller? Who was it?" "I don't know," Lily said. "Same time every day. 2 rings. Then it stopped." "Male or female?" Slack asked. "Male," Lily replied. Smooth voice, words clipped, dry, like reading from paper. Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. "Did he give instructions?" "No," Lily said. "Just the time of day." Mrs. Dodds stepped forward. "And you left the counter then?" "Yes," Lily admitted. "He said I should always be in the back at that time, so I wouldn't be in the way." Miss Marple looked toward the rows of clean cups, picked one from the far left, turned it under the light. A faint ring marked the inside. She took another from the middle. The stain was lighter. She set both on the counter. "The rotation pattern is wrong," she said. "This cup from the left hasn't been used in days." Mrs. Dodds frowned. "That's not possible. I clean them all, daily." Miss Marple moved along the row. Her hand stopped at an empty space. "One is missing," she said. Lily shook her head. "I don't know where it is." Miss Marple turned to Mrs. Dodds. "Have you noticed gaps before?" Mrs. Dodds nodded slowly. "Yes, always in the same place." "Which shift?" Miss Marple asked. "Clive's," Mrs. Dodds replied without hesitation. Slack's eyes went to Clive. He stood near the office door, face still. Miss Marple took out a small notebook, sketched the cup shelf, marked the missing space. "This is deliberate," she said. "Someone learned exactly when and how the cups are moved." Mrs. Dodds crossed her arms. "That means someone studied my routine." "Yes," Miss Marple agreed. "Every action, every timing." Lady Bantry stepped closer. "Who would bother?" Miss Marple didn't look away from the diagram. Someone who needed the staff out of the way. Someone who wanted the counter clear. Slack took a step toward Clive. "You were here during those times." "Yes," Clive said. "I work here, don't I?" Miss Marple closed the notebook, walked toward him, steps slow. "You didn't just work here," she said. "You planned here. Every move, every gap." Clive's eyes flicked to Lily, then back to Miss Marple. She stopped 2 feet from him, tone flat. Miss Marple stares at Clive. "You did." 2 hands, 1 push. Miss Marple faced the group, tone even. 2 people worked together. She pointed to Clive. "Debt, control. You held the loans. You held the pressure." Her eyes shifted to Mabel. "Scandal, rivalry. You had reason to harm Lady Bantry's reputation." Mabel's lips pressed tight. No denial. Slack folded his arms. "So, not just one person?" "Yes," Miss Marple said. "They needed each other." She stepped toward the counter. "The plan, simple in parts, complex in timing." She held up the cotton wad. "Peppermint haze. Mask the smell of gas. Keep it pleasant, so no one noticed." She turned to Mabel. "Your feint was staged. It gave the crowd a reason to panic." Mabel's jaw tightened. "I was told it would be quick." Miss Marple ignored her. She pointed to the teapots. "Tea mix-up. 1 cold, 1 hot. A false clue, meant to distract." Lady Bantry stood still. "Why target me?" Miss Marple answered direct. "Because you own the tea room. Your name carries weight. A public scandal would force you into financial dependence. Clive could offer help, at a price." Slack nodded slowly. "And Mabel gets her revenge for losing business." "Exactly," Miss Marple said. Mrs. Dodds moved closer. "Show us how." Miss Marple walked to the vent. The peppermint wad was placed here earlier. Gas valves adjusted to leak slowly. The scent covered it. At 11:20, the phone call signaled Lily to leave the counter. The panel could be accessed without witnesses. She looked at Mabel. "You collapsed right on cue. All attention moved to you. No one watched the corridor." Mabel looked away. "I didn't touch the panel." "No," Miss Marple agreed. "Clive did." Clive stayed silent. Miss Marple began listing. 10:55. Final check on cups and pots. 11 o'clock. Peppermint wad in place. 11:10. Mabel takes her seat. 11:15. Lily moved from counter. 11:20. Phone call as signal. 11:21. Gas panel opened. 11:22. Mabel collapses. 11:23. Confusion hides the work. 11:25. Panel closed. 11:30. Scene stabilized. Slack wrote quickly. "You've timed it exactly." Miss Marple nodded once. The smallest details told the story. Wrong ribbon. Unused cup. Upside-down stamp. Fresh screws. Lady Bantry's eyes locked on Mabel. "You agreed to ruin me. For this?" Mabel's voice was flat. "I wanted you embarrassed, not destroyed." Miss Marple raised her hand slightly. One detail still missing. Her gaze moved from Mabel to Clive. Access to the storeroom was essential. Without that, the panel couldn't be reached. Slack looked up. So, who had the missing key? But who had the missing key? What leaves comes back. Miss Marple stood before Lily. "Hold out your apron." Lily hesitated, then obeyed. Miss Marple ran her fingers along the hem. They caught on a rough spot. She pinched it. Small gray particles came away, metal dust. Lady Bantry leaned in. "From the storeroom key?" "From the lock," Miss Marple replied. She turned to the shelves, crouched low. Eyes moved to the base of the back panel. A faint scratch line under the lowest shelf. She pressed her nail into it. The edge felt fresh. Mrs. Dodds stepped closer. "That wasn't there yesterday." Miss Marple stood, looked at Clive. "You had the key." Clive didn't answer. Mabel spoke instead. "He took it from Lady Bantry's chain yesterday. Lady Bantry's eyes narrowed. "How?" Clive shifted his weight. Mabel said, "You were busy with customers." He slipped it free, replaced it with a spare. Miss Marple continued, "With the key, you opened the storeroom, accessed the gas panel, adjusted the valve to leak slow." She pointed toward the vent. "Then, the peppermint cover, wad in place, masked the smell." Slack wrote fast. "And Mabel?" "She wore the mask," Miss Marple said, "collapsed on cue, distracted the room, cleared the corridor." Mabel's voice was tight. It was only for minutes, enough to make her look careless. Miss Marple ignored her. Once the leak was set, panel closed, screws wiped, but dust not replaced evenly. Mrs. Dodds added, "That's why the line on the floor was fresh." Miss Marple nodded. Then came the signal. She looked at Lily. 11:20. Phone rang. You left the counter, corridor clear." Lily's voice was low. "I thought it was harmless." Miss Marple stepped toward the main room, stopped in front of Lady Bantry, reached into her pocket, pulled out a small brass key on a short chain. "This is yours," she said. It was hidden inside the cake tin. After the swap, Lady Bantry took it, weighed it in her palm. The real one. Correct wear on the edges. Clive looked away. Mabel stayed silent. Miss Marple placed the chain in Lady Bantry's hand, tone firm. "Now, you see? When truth speaks, the voice is low." The tea-room doors were open, every seat filled. No one spoke loudly. Miss Marple stood at the counter. On the surface, a cotton wad, a jar of peppermint drops, a small kettle. Inspector Slack stood near the door, his cuffs visible in his hand. Lady Bantry sat at the head table. Her hands rested on the recovered chain. Miss Marple picked up the cotton wad, placed it in a shallow dish, added drops of peppermint. She lifted the kettle, poured hot water over it. The scent spread instantly. Mrs. Dodds covered her nose. "It's strong," she said. Miss Marple nodded. "This scent hides gas. In a closed space, it covers danger until it's too late." She turned to the vent. This was placed before opening. The panel was adjusted to leak slowly, the smell masked by peppermint. Slack stepped forward, and the feint. Miss Marple looked at Mabel. She pretended to collapse at the exact moment of the signal, drew attention from the corridor. Mabel's face reddened. She looked down. Miss Marple walked to the teapots, lifted the cold one. This pot was served to her, a propriedad. The steam from the other was the distraction. She set it down. With staff away, the panel was reached, screws removed, valve adjusted, leak began. Lady Bantry's eyes stayed on Clive. "You planned this?" Clive didn't respond. Miss Marple continued. Mabel wanted revenge. Clive wanted control. Together, they staged it, damaged this business, forced dependence. Slack stepped toward Clive. "Stand up." Clive rose slowly, hands at his sides. Slack clicked the cuffs open. Waited. Mabel looked at him, lips pressed tight. Miss Marple spoke. They worked together, but Clive directed the timing, controlled the signal, took the key, made the adjustments. Slack's voice was firm. "You're under arrest." He stepped closer. Clive didn't resist. Head high. Lady Bantry's gaze didn't waver. Her grip on the chain, tight. The scent of fresh scones drifted from the kitchen. Mrs. Dodds returned to the counter, didn't look at either suspect. Slack placed the cuffs on Clive's wrists. The click echoed in the quiet. Clive glanced at Mabel, then at Miss Marple. His voice was low. Clive's face softens. I wasn't alone. Hot tea, warm hearts. Mrs. Dodds worked the counter, shaped dough without pause. A smell of butter filled the room. Lily carried cups between tables, steps steady, Hands calm, Lady Bantry sat with the day's accounts. Figures balanced, roof fund intact. Outside, the church bells rang the hour, sound even, no one hurried. Mabel sat near the wall, eyes down, hands in her lap. Lady Bantry walked to her, stopped at the table. "You can speak," she said. Mabel looked up slowly, voice low. "I went too far." Lady Bantry didn't move. "You did harm, but you'll have the chance to repair it." Mabel nodded once, breathed slow. Miss Marple stood by the window, eyes on the tables, every seat taken. Slack had left an hour ago. Clive was gone. The air, quiet. Mrs. Dodds placed fresh scones on the counter. Lily poured tea into a pot. Steam curled upward. Lady Bantry returned to her table, wrote a note in the ledger, closed it firmly. Mabel stayed seated. Didn't touch the tea before her. Shoulders lowered slightly. Miss Marple stayed at the window. Light shifted across the room. Hands folded. She spoke without turning. "Reputation doesn't break. It's washed clean." Lady Bantry glanced at her. The words stayed in the air. Lily brought a tray to Miss Marple. 1 cup, 1 plate. Miss Marple took the cup, sipped once. Eyes on the street. A child passed outside. Carrying a loaf, no one stopped him. Mrs. Dodds wiped the counter, stacked clean plates, checked order slips. Lady Bantry opened the cash drawer, counted once, closed it. Mabel stood slowly, stepped toward the counter, stopped near Lady Bantry. "I'll help with the next event," she said. Voice steady now. Lady Bantry gave a short nod. That would be wise. Lily cleared the nearest table, carried plates into the kitchen, returned with cutlery. Miss Marple placed her empty cup on the tray, looked over the room. Nothing out of place. Mrs. Dodds sliced a scone, set it on a plate, pushed it toward Miss Marple. Miss Marple picked it up, took a small bite, set it down. Her gaze returned to the window. The corners of her mouth shifted. Miss Marple smiles. "Today, the tea tastes right again."